Ever felt those awkward vibes when religion and money come up? You're not alone. Welcome to Yahweh's Money, the podcast where we tackle the crossroads of faith and finance. I'm Shay Cook, an accredited financial counselor and the CEO and founder of Crusaders for Change, LLC.
And I'm Vanessa McNelley, accredited financial counselor and COO of Crusaders for Change. Join us on our journey as we discuss topics like tithing, saving, and conquering debt through religious perspectives. Let's get started.
Hey y'all, today Vanessa and I will be talking about what happens when mental health and finances collide. From the staggering cost of mental health care to the burden of medical debt that many people face while seeking treatment, we will also explore the emotional tolls that our finances can put on us, along with the solace we seek in faith and prayer. Let's shed some light on the overlooked challenges we face while striving for healing and stability. Wow, Vanessa, that's a mouthful.
And this is a heavy topic. It is a very heavy topic, so we have a lot to talk about.
We do. And in Psalms 34, 17 through 18, it lovingly tells us, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all of their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and save those who are crushed in spirit. Amen. Lord is with y'all. If y'all are down and out in a deep and dark place, sad, depressed, anxious, whatever the emotion feeling is, God is there for you. But today we're going to talk about this mental health trauma when it comes to finances, y'all, because it's like,
It's real. It is real.
yeah.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah. And I think this is something we need to really think and talk about too, is what does the Bible say about mental health too?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's very little, if nothing, in the Bible, right?
There
Mentioning mental
is.
health.
I mean, it just talks from in a different place. You know, a lot of times back in the biblical days, people thought it was the devil, which it could have been,
Right,
or it
right.
was some mental or physical health, that they were dealing with, whether it was, uh, what's the different kind of physical elements they had in the Bible? I was thinking of leprosy,
Right.
or those kind of things. And a lot of things, or they're just like, oh, don't talk to that person, walk by them. They were kind of like shying away
Right.
from them. Every
Yeah.
time I read the
Yeah.
Bible, it was like somebody sitting on the
Shunned.
street
Yeah.
dealing with, they were shunned from the
Uh-huh.
community, and they were poor because nobody gave
Ugh.
them assistance and they couldn't
Right.
work, and it could have just been a mental health thing. So I think it's
That's
all in the Bible. It's just written differently
shown
than what we are.
differently. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, thankfully we are living in different times where we can talk about these things, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
get this, over $240 billion a year has been spent on mental health care in the U.S. And this was in 2019.
Yeah,
So
so that's
before
probably
the
double,
pandemic,
tripled.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is so much money. So
Hmm.
much money to be spent on mental health. And I think that shows us how important our mental health is. I mean, just like our physical health.
Yeah, exactly. And we definitely need to look at the numbers after the pandemic
I
because
agree.
man, now mental health is the number one issue. All of the stuff that's going on in the world,
Mm,
wherever you are in America or beyond, a lot of that ties back to mental health issues or mental health disorders, or just people not
yeah.
taking care of themselves mentally. We got this very powerful mind and brain, and we don't do what we need to do to take care of that. We take care of our
Right.
physical, spiritual, family, but the mental health is missing.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
mm,
And then mental health issues. I mean, there's higher rates of unemployment and lower incomes because of all of this. I
hmm
mean, and employers are starting to add that to the packages, which is
thankfully.
great. Mental
Yeah.
health care, which is important. And then you're seeing a lot more health insurance saying you can get more than the 12 sessions or the yearly sessions, which I remember back in the day, you can only go to a therapist for like a year under your medical insurance and you had to pay out of pocket. Now it's
Right.
like continuous, which is great because we all need that kind of assistance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you think about this too. It makes a whole lot of sense with the higher rates of unemployment because people who are having, mental anguish, they lose the ability to have that drive a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. You become depressed and you want to stay inside and you want to be in a dark room and that's not, everything to deal with mental health, but
Yeah.
a lot of it brings on some depression and that makes us, not really have the ability to get up and move through these things we normally could.
To be productive. We say that with
Exactly.
finances. People are usually, when they're
Exactly.
dealing with financial issues, they are not productive. And the same with
Exactly.
mental health.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah.
are some high functioning people with anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
And they're able, I was reading an article recently where they're able to go into work and basically fake the funk, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I'm probably saying that wrong in terms of what psychology, would say, but or a psychologist would say, but still they're going in there and they're putting on the mask, they're putting on the face and saying, I'm
Yeah.
good, I'm good, I'm good. Really, when they go into the office or their cubicle, they're suffering, but they're like compartmentalizing all of those
Mhm.
issues so they can get through the day. And then they go home
Exactly.
and they're like, oh my God, like
Exactly.
how? And
Yeah.
people do that with alcoholism, drug abuse, like financial issues. They oh my God, say it for me.
I don't know what you're trying to say, or I would.
Compartmentalize.
Oh, compartmentalize. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they try.
They
Yeah.
do. They do.
Yeah.
And I have some really good examples of this, unfortunately, in my life,
Yeah.
with all of this. But my father, and I can talk
Mm,
about it now because he passed a few months ago.
mm,
But my dad had really bad panic attacks and anxiety my entire life.
mm,
And it was something the entire family felt and we all had to deal with. Growing up, we called it a babysitter. Anytime my mom would go out of town, we would have to get a babysitter for dad, is what we would say.
mm,
He couldn't be left alone. He had like a 1 mile radius in which he was comfortable driving in from the house. And thankfully, my parents owned a business that was within that 1 mile radius. So he could come and go back and forth to there. But it was a lot of taking care of my father growing up and making sure he had the things that made him comfortable. Because if he was not comfortable, we all kind of suffered in that with him. But if he would have had a regular 9 to 5 job, I don't know where my family would have been, because
wow.
I don't think that's something he could have really done. Uh, we were thinking that this probably happened, the panic attacks and anxiety happened after his time in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked in copper mines when he was in his 20s.
Oh,
So
okay.
a lot of things can come up from that. And it all kind of
Mm-hmm.
happened after that. So he was able to kind of get through his early years. But, it brings on a lot. And if you think about lower incomes and unemployment with this, it doesn't just impact that person, it impacts everybody in their family unit.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Family and then your colleagues, if they're suffering, you can see working with colleagues that are clearly dealing with a mental health issue
Right.
it's
Yeah.
I don't even
Yeah.
know how to describe it. It's
It's so
daunting.
much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot. And then,
Yeah.
either you're on the compassion side and you're learning sympathetic,
Mm-hmm.
empathetic with them, and you're like, oh my God, how can I help you? Or you're on your other
Right.
side and you're like, dude, like you're not getting your job done. Like,
Right. Right.
and so there could be like either
Yeah.
way, it's a lot of stress on both
It
sides,
is a lot of stress. It is.
So it's
Yeah.
important to get that help.
It really is. And yeah, and then mental illness is the leading cause of disability in the US,
Wow.
which that in itself is so impactful when you think about it, because usually mental illness is one of those disabilities you can't see.
It's
So,
invisible.
right. So there's all these people who are judging,
Hmm.
and saying it's not real.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, I faced this, in my home. Um, when I was married, my ex-husband, he thought my dad was making everything up and that we were just catering to him and he was being a baby. And anytime I would change the way I did things because my dad was going to be there,
Hmm.
I would, get the brunt of that because, it was fake and it was made up and all these things. And it made life really, really hard
Yeah,
when,
I'm sure.
and I'm sure sometimes my dad probably put on a little more than he should have or could have, because he could have, reined things in a little bit.
Hmm.
But it's a lot of stress on everybody involved with this. So, coming into this whole unemployment, lower income, and then the leading cause of disability. I mean, disability takes a long time to get.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of time you don't work during that because you're going through the process of showing that you can't work. So there's a
exactly.
lot of loss of income.
Yeah. And that's just dealing with the disability income. So if you're just
Exactly.
having a disability and you're not even trying to file for disability as terms of income, people are still suffering every day. And like you said, it's invisible, quote unquote, because some people you can clearly see there's some things going on, but when
Right.
it's, it differentiates from physical disability, where you can
Hmm.
actually see somebody, you can make those accommodations for them. But and you can make accommodations for mental health as well, but you have to disclose that, and there's a lot of, as we always talk about, shame and guilt around
Yep.
mental health
And
and
stigma.
everything else,
Yep.
and you have to disclose that to your employer so they can make those kind of accommodations. So it's heavy, it's a lot, and a lot of people are not dealing with it, and then
Right.
things happen in the world and you're like, oh, that person probably had a disability,
Right.
or things happen in a home and you're like, oh my god. I hear alcoholism and drug use and mental health is and mental illness is a huge issue for domestic violence,
Hmm.
or suicides and
Right.
all of that. So,
Right.
oh goodness gracious. And then you move on to people not seeking help because they don't have insurance because it's expensive, or
It,
their employer doesn't provide it.
right. Right. And
Yeah.
I think you and I come from a military background, and
Mhm.
I am so thankful for the
Yeah.
resources. But at the same time, there is still that stigma,
Mhm.
especially with the Army, of
Yeah.
all the other branches. And my ex-husband was Army,
Mhm.
and he suffered with PTSD after serving 3 tours in Iraq. And he actually ended up committing suicide a few
Mm.
years ago. But when we were married, the last few years of our marriage, there was so much turmoil within him and trying to get help, even though we had insurance,
Mhm.
finding a provider that accepted it and that was taking new patients, because
Yeah.
the mental health realm is just inundated with patients and there's not enough providers out there.
There's not.
Yeah, and then dealing with insurance is a whole other ball game.
Oh my god.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. I mean, I remember I had a list of all the providers within a 2-hour radius of us.
Mhm.
And every day I would call, make phone calls, phone calls, phone calls, not accepting new patients. They don't take TRICARE anymore. Finally, I was on round 2 of my list, and I just broke down on the phone with a receptionist, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do,
Mhm.
because here I am trying to get help for somebody who, in the first place, isn't going to seek it themselves.
Yeah.
And she was like, give me 2 minutes. And I just happened to cry on the phone with the right person, because her and the therapist were ex military.
Oh, okay.
So, finally got him in therapy. But, then you move every few years and it's like, okay, we have to find a
Gotta
new
start
provider.
all over. Yeah.
So there's just so much dealing with this, and then the cost of it without having
Yeah.
insurance.
And
I
that's what I'm
mean,
saying. Yeah, hopefully you can afford it. Hopefully, if you can, but if you're listening and you can't, there's other avenues. I mean, there's some
yeah.
free avenues out there, and saying always use your search engines on your
Mhm.
computer. But chaplain. I went to a lot of chaplains over the years, spiritual leaders,
Mhm.
religious leaders, and or family members that are, some old head ones that listens
Right.
that actually could offer some good advice. You got to test
Mhm.
them out because some people are just so stuck in their ways. Like I was mentioning
Exactly.
earlier, in the Black community, there is a huge stigma for getting help with mental health because they're like, go pray it away or go to church and all that, which is
Mhm.
great, but you
Mhm.
still need to talk to somebody because there's a lot of judging and a lot of crap going on in the churches too, and people don't feel comfortable. And so,
Exactly.
we need to get away from the stigma. But it's in the military, it's in many different cultures, industry. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just all over.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, we
yeah.
are taught to suck it up and drive on,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
deal with it, especially for men. I think
Yeah.
that's
Oh
the
God, that's
biggest part of
huge.
this too.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about all this money being spent with insurance. Think about like prescriptions and deductibles, and
Mm,
the insurance itself and the cost of all this. It can add up so quickly. So if you're already in a household that is underemployed or unemployed, what are you supposed to do?
yeah.
What are you supposed to do? You can feel trapped very
You
quickly.
really can. You really can. And seeking help again wherever you can from there, I mean, especially after the pandemic or even during the pandemic, a lot of free resources were coming up. Like what's it called? Give an Hour?
Yes, I
Yeah.
love Give an Hour.
Hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
those kind of resources, and then there's like I don't know, community centers out there that actually will provide a free session,
Hmm.
so there's different ways. And then I know people are suffering from mental health because of all the stuff going on with their finances. So calling Crusaders for
Exactly.
Change, getting your free clarity call so we can help
Hmm.
you get you some clarity, but also figure out how we can help you and or connect you with another resource
Right.
that you need. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
because a lot of times when we spend, or most always when we spend, it's emotional and
Mhm.
it's mental. And we spend because we're happy, or we spend because we're sad, or because things are not going our way. There's so much linked together with our finances and our mental
Exactly.
health. Absolutely.
So
You know,
true.
so what are some things we can do? I mean, can we turn to God for help? If we keep our faith in God and we believe in his plan, I feel like that already puts us in this headspace of being a little more aware and a little more understanding and a little more like gentle with ourselves, you
Mhm.
know? And I think if we can give ourselves grace and we can seek guidance from Him, it's going to help pull us out a little bit at a time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, having faith in God
Hmm.
is key in my life. From my experience, I would not be here without Him. All the stuff that I've gone through, and being able to rely on Him and to
Hmm.
be obedient to Him and His plan and His word has been, oh my God, it's just been amazing to know that a higher spirit is there guiding us, there for us. Of course, we have free will, but
Right.
just being able to guide us through this heavy life, and just all of the stuff that
Yeah.
goes with it. Mental health is so daunting. I suffer from anxiety. I've had depression since forever. I was clinically diagnosed back when I was 19, anxiety years later, and done the medicine, been in therapy off and on for 20 plus years. And,
Hmm.
without God and Him guiding me to the right therapist, and then being a military spouse and moving around and having to find a new therapist or chaplain or somebody or friend, colleague to talk to. I couldn't have done that without God. So keeping
Yeah.
faith in Him, and I just know, I'm even reading my devotionals lately. It's just the walk with Him, having
Hmm.
Him close. He says, when you're going through, that is the time you need to be calling on His name, on His Spirit, because that is where He gave us the Spirit for that and much more, but
Yeah.
especially to be by our side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need to harness the power of prayer. And
Amen.
especially if we feel comfortable, and hopefully we'll all
Mm-hmm.
get to that point where we can pray out loud and we
Mm-hmm.
can pray with others. Because if
Yeah.
others know what we're going through and they're praying for us too, it's going to be a little easier because they're going to be more understanding. We're going to have the power of multitudes praying for us, right? And they're going to know what we're going through. And we have these other godly people around us that are going to check in on us and make sure we're okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I would add a power of prayer and praise, because I
Hmm.
find those two go really hand in hand.
Agree.
Praying through whatever you going through. I was reading the word today in Acts in the scripture notes how they were talking about the prayer and how believers came back in the beginning days of the church of Peter
Hmm.
and Joseph, and how they were bringing that together after the resurrection of Jesus, and how believers back then, they prayed about the problem, but they didn't pray away the problem, because they know God uses those problems so you become stronger and more
Agree.
wise. And I love that. It's like,
Agree.
you don't, yeah, you can pray, oh, try to say, Lord, take this problem away from me,
Yeah.
and He may do that. That is a miracle. But
Yeah.
most of the time, you are going to still have to go through that
Right.
problem so
Yeah.
you know who brought you through, so you can remember. But on the other side is the praise. And
Hmm.
to me, I think I get off more. Prayer is super important, would always be foundational, but praise takes me to a higher level of
Agree.
spirituality and
Agree.
also just getting through life. Like when I'm
Yeah.
getting through a bad day, I cut on my praise music. I'm shouting and screaming and all that stuff sometimes, but sometimes I'm just sitting there and just listening to the praise and
Hmm.
praising God, like, thank you, Jesus. Thank you for
Hmm.
the little things, right? The gratitude of it all. I mean,
Yeah.
gratitude can get you through life.
It really can. And
Yeah.
if we're focusing on the positives, we're
Yes,
not going to focus on the negatives so much,
exactly.
or we're going to see that we have more positives than
More
negatives.
positives.
So,
Exactly.
all these things they work hand in hand. And
Mm-hmm.
if we can truly put it in God's hands and
Mm,
realize that there is a reason for this,
exactly.
it might be that, we're put through this because we're going to help somebody else get through it one day.
Yeah.
or we're supposed to teach someone something, or we learn a huge lesson from this, or maybe it's something that we don't even see. It's going to help somebody 30 years down the road, but there's always a reason for it.
There's always a
And just
reason.
knowing that this is not done in vain.
Exactly. Putting it in God's hands and letting it go. That's the
Hmm.
hardest thing. Like to me, it's like if you're constantly praying about the same thing, I feel like that's kind of I've always said this me too personally. It's kind of disrespectful because it's like or it's unbelieving. Like, Lord, okay, I'm just gonna say, Lord, I'm praying for this apple. Next day, praying for this apple. Lord, like God is like, all right,
Yeah.
Shay, I've heard you. Like you just let it go. Why
I
you
brought
keep
you
praying?
4 oranges and
Yeah,
12 bananas, right?
hello, right? And then that's that part right there, right? Like God's like, okay, you keep playing for an apple. I gave you freaking kiwi and pineapple, like
Right.
Vanessa
Hmm.
said, all the oranges, and you keep on praying for the apple. Like, what is wrong with you? So to me, it's like
Right.
you find good in everything. I mean, and God uses all of that, good, bad, everything, and different for your good. So I mean, but you know what? Let's talk about this. I mean, emotions and stress can cause debt. I mean, we're
Hmm.
financial counselors. We see this all the time, right? Depression. Debt can lead to feelings of hopelessness.
Right.
Oh my God.
Right. Yeah, and there are people out there who see no other way out other than taking their own lives in this scenario,
Mm,
because they feel like, okay, once I'm gone, this debt is gone, and I, don't have to worry about it anymore. My family doesn't have to worry about it. And that is such a sad, horrible place to be in,
so
to feel
sad.
like there is no other way.
Yeah.
You do feel hopeless and you feel like there is no way. And I think sometimes when you can sit down and you can talk to somebody who understands the financial aspect of it and the behavioral aspect of it, and kind of can put those together for you like we do,
Mm-hmm.
you can have these conversations and they can help you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and where you could be in a year and where you could be in 2 years, and
Yeah.
what can come of this, and how you can do it in a way that you see the light finally. Because that
Exactly.
is the most hopeless place to be, when you can see absolutely no light.
It's so sad. I don't know. I'm thinking of a phoenix, right? When they burn up and it's just
Hmm.
ashes, and people get so stuck in the ashes and not realizing eventually you're going to be this beautiful phoenix again. You're going to rise up and see the light. And it just takes time and help and work. I always say sacrifice, self
Right.
control, discipline are key to get out of debt. And you got yourself into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it sucks. It really does. Been there, done that. Had
Right.
student loan debt, had car debt, had house debt, had business debt. I've had it and it sucks. And but what God reminded me recently when I was thinking about some debt that I'm dealing with, and I was like, wait a minute, but I've gotten through this before. Yeah, this might be more than that, but I've gotten past this
Right.
before. I paid off
Uh-huh.
debt before. I've been debt free before, and this debt that I have now is good debt because it's to grow the business or it's a house. It's not like I'm out here just spending crazy and racking up debt just for no reason. No, it's
Right.
for growth. There's a purpose behind that debt. And God is going to provide, and before I now even try to even obtain any kind of debt, I'm praying, asking God, show me, is this right?
Yeah.
Like, give
Yeah.
me guidance before I sign this paper.
Hmm.
So as long as you got God in that situation, you can get through it. But then there's an anxiety too. Debt can fuel anxiety and worry. And now you're
Exactly.
out here in these streets, like, how can I pay or how will I
Hmm.
pay for my bills? And people are really suffering with this.
They really are. And I think the big part about this is realizing that debt does not have to be something that you deal with. It's something that we choose to deal with in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
So if we can learn from these mistakes, like we've talked about, and have these conversations, I think it always comes back to being willing to talk about it with somebody,
Exactly.
and to get it out there, because there's so many people who have anxiety
Hmm.
because of the money that is owed. I mean, I
Exactly.
think a lot of young families face this too, and the breadwinners in those
Hmm.
families, because it's like, okay, I'm only making this much money, and we want to send this kid to soccer camp this year, and this kid's going to be on a whatever team, and those things can just add up, and
Add up,
they
build
cause
up. Yeah.
anxiety and they cause worry, and then you can't sleep, and then you're working more hours, but you're getting less sleep, and it piles on and piles on. And being able to have these conversations and talk about it can really help.
It really can, because then from the depression and or anxiety then leads to the guilt and the shame, and it's all can be all mixed
Right.
together in a
Exactly.
craziness of it all, and then blaming ourselves or themselves for finances or needing assistance with mental health treatment costs,
Yeah.
just needing to like understand like where am I going to get this money,
Right.
or I need help, or or I don't want to get help because then now I'm going to it's just an ugly beast,
It
right?
is.
It's
It's an
like
ugly cycle. Yeah.
it's an ugly cycle. Been there, done that. Like, oh man, like how am I gonna? I know I need therapists. I gotta pay for it, but then my family find out that I have it. They might judge me. Oh my
Right.
god, if my employer find out about it, they might say I can't do this, whatever. And then it's like a lot of this stuff is unreal. It's not even. You're making up these stories, and it's like I believe most people will support you through your journey.
Agree.
And,
Right.
and so, but because of what we see or have heard, and
Mhm.
family members how they react to it and all, it's just really ugly. It's
It
just really
can be.
ugly.
It definitely can be for sure.
Yeah. Oh man, I mean, whoa, we're gonna go deeper into this from debt to destiny because it's a lot, and people are really suffering in the world right now with mental health, but they're also suffering with debt. And I mean, it's probably going to be around forever, debt. But we're here to support you. And I have to say, we didn't put this in the script, but this is our third season of our podcast.
Yay.
Yay. So we're excited to our current listeners, our listeners that always been on board with us from the beginning, but we're excited for all those new
Mhm.
listeners that are coming to listen to Yahweh's Money, and just to be in
Yeah.
another season, but even a
Exactly.
third season.
We're growing up.
We're growing up. We're toddlers now. We're not little babies. We're going to go through our terrible threes. That
Oh
makes
my
sense why
goodness. Yep.
Shay's talking her mess these days, because we're in our
Ah.
terrible threes. But I'm excited, and I'm just thankful to God for another season. I'm thankful to TJ, our podcast manager, Vanessa, and even all those behind the scenes that helped us in the past, like to get us where we are. I just wanted to in this moment say thank you. So, any final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I would just say, mental health is something very personal. And I would say if we can just kind of get past the shame and the guilt of having, mental health crisis or awareness or whatever you want to call it, like we all go through some sort of mental health scenario in our lives, So just be patient, be open, and know that therapy is wonderful. I've had a therapist for a few years, changed my life. So
It really is. And it's necessary.
it is.
You take care of your
Yeah.
body, you take your physical body, you take care of your car, your house, your children, everything. Why not take care of your mind?
Agree.
Hello, people. I
Agree.
mean, let's make this normal, take away the stigma. But
Right?
Thank you for joining us. Wow. Thank you. A big thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you found today's chat about the intersection of religion and money insightful. We would love to hear your feedback. Hit that subscribe button or follow the podcast. And please feel free to leave us a review.
Yes. And for the latest Yahweh's Money content, visit us at crusaders4change.org or find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Until next time, stay financially fit and spiritually inspired.
And remember, it's always better Yahweh's way.